Do
I don't
you
mind
do you have a favorite
digestivo.
brand?
Actually, Amaro l'Amaro del Capo. It's a pretty good one.
You don't play Scopa, do you?
Ah, see, I haven't played in a few years, but
We can play and talk.
Let's try. Let's try.
This is the best way, in my opinion. But the next thing I was gonna say, a bit of a deeper topic. Sorry, I'm close to this mic. But especially since you've been doing, or you've been putting out your management ideas more over the past say year and a bit.
Yeah.
What do you make of all these layoffs going on? Like all over,
Yeah.
not just in Salesforce or this or that. Like they're kind of everywhere, right?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know if I have a special. I might need to focus on what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But-
Focus. Okay, we have time. We don't have to rush this
there you
game.
go. Okay, very good.
No money's on the line.
Okay, good. Let me check though. Okay. So I think that to a certain extent is probably the natural fluctuation that the industry is going through, because during the pandemic, I was also hiring. I hired a lot of people during that time, about 20. And it was impossible to hire someone. Like people were, especially the profiles I was looking for, at least, they were flying off the shelves. And so I suspect that during the pandemic, a lot of, especially tech companies, because there was this immediate or massive push towards digitizing everything, even for companies that didn't have a digital infrastructure before, led many tech companies to obviously hire more so that they could address the demand.
Sure.
But now that peak is behind us, maybe they need to adjust a little bit. So I think that that's part of what might be happening. What I do think, though, is that for like layoffs, this might be counterintuitive, but I think layoffs are a great opportunity for the company to set up or establish or demonstrate their company culture. Because people that stay, they take note of how you treated people that were laid off, right? I'm sure very well.
100%.
And so I find that's a missed opportunity. One of my bosses at TELUS told me at one point, the most important thing is to maintain dignity during that process. Unfortunately, I've had to do it. I've had to lay people off both at my parents' company years and years ago and at TELUS. Not many times, but a few times, enough that I remember, and I know for a fact that any manager can confirm that is the absolute worst part of any management job. But sometimes there's not really an option. But maintaining dignity during that process is what is gonna create and maintain your company culture. Because people that were trusted employees today, they cannot go overnight to the convict. Like they don't go from a trusted employee to a convict overnight. And so that's an opportunity for companies to show how respectful they are in treating their people, their partners. And maybe a lot of these tech companies aren't used to that. So I don't know how they handle that.
With showing dignity, for example, besides maybe giving a good package, how do you do that?
Well, I think the first thing is you can't tell someone that today was yesterday was helping you with, a big future project. You can't just cut their access to every information tomorrow. I find that's the
Heard a lot
thing.
of that.
I know I understand that there's a lot of that, but I think that's one way to say, okay, that's very transactional. It makes me feel, if I was on the receiving side, I perceived it as a very transactional relationship than we had, because the moment you didn't need me anymore, I'm out. There's another approach, which is, hey, you have until Friday to collect your information that you need, because I'm sure everybody collects some personal information on their work laptop, right? So take a second, gather your stuff,
Sort yourself out.
Have a second to say your whatever goodbyes. And I think I'm sure there are some situations where that's not possible because of different
Like the
circumstances.
high volume situations. that you
maybe,
see?
but for the most, maybe also thinking about super sensitive information, maybe. But for the
Right.
most part, for most people, I think it's probably doable. That would be one way that I can think of to
Hmm.
maintain dignity.
Yeah, I think. Do you think it has anything to do too? Because I mean, there are some times where, sure, company, for example, has like investors, right? And those investors call the shots and they say, "Hey, buddy, look, I own most of your company. This is what you're doing, and you're doing it tomorrow."
Yeah.
And they force you to do it, right? But in a case where you do have a bit more control, do you think the transparency beforehand, like as a manager, sometimes you won't see stuff coming, but other times, as a manager who sits on, say, the leadership board, you will see a few things heading in that direction, especially if you've been doing what you're doing for a good while. You think the transparency to your team is important or warranted when it seems like it's going down that route? Like, do you owe that to them?
You know, it's a great question. I don't know. I am of two minds there. Not because I like transparency. I like
Within the
telling-
limits and constraints, right?
For sure. I guess there's also the other argument I could see is you also want to shield the team from undue stress.
Sure.
And so it's a bit of a fine balance that you need to find between, okay, I want to be transparent, but I also don't want to create panic, because the moment you even start that discussion, then you have to assume that it's gonna go beyond your team, because people are gonna
They're
talk.
going to talk, for sure.
So it's a very sensitive.
What you say,
it's
how
very
you
hard
say
to
it,
navigate. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. It's a tough time. I think the managers also, what happens, I find, is the managers are not really equipped. They're not really trained to do stuff like that. And maybe because we don't, thankfully, it doesn't happen often enough. But that's another hard part. Like most managers,
They don't know
really
how, eh?
They don't know how.
Where to start?
Yeah, and if you have done it a few times, then the first few times you probably made some mistakes, but at least the third time you know how to handle it. Hopefully you learn from some of your mistakes. But for people that do it the first time, it's tough. I remember doing it the first time. I was like, I have no idea what do we say and how, and it was tough, man. It's probably the worst part of the job.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Of being a manager. It's just kind of, it comes with it, but it's definitely not
Yeah.
like a fun thing to do at
Yeah.
all.
Also because oftentimes it's not really your call.
Hmm.
Like you're told, especially they offer it this way, right? The company is cutting whatever 5%, whatever
Yeah.
percentage, and so that
This is
means
what's
that every
happening.
VP has to cut that percentage, every director, every manager, and so there's not really a big enough reason. Sometimes it's just that that's the mandate, and you have to find that percentage.
But yeah, I think you're right. Right, as a manager, maybe you have to take it upon yourself too to be prepared for something like this. Like as
I
a
think so,
manager, it's
yeah.
very possible that this could happen.
Yeah.
Whether or not you work at the best company in the world,
Yeah,
it's very possible that you may be in this situation where you have to do that at some point.
yeah,
So maybe speaking with HR, speaking with whoever you need to speak with to know like what's the good way to do this,
Yeah.
reflect on it, and use your best judgment. I think part of it is common sense too. I'm way new to management compared to you, but in my opinion, no. Like part of it is also within the constraints and limits of what you can and can't say for whatever the company will tell you, right?
yeah.
Part of it is common sense and like being human, no?
Yeah, I totally agree. So when the first
Like,
layoffs I
put
was
yourself in their
involved in,
shoes a little bit if
Yeah.
you can.
Exactly, really being human, being almost remove the corporate part and talk as people and say, hey, I know, and I'm sorry, and and try to support to the extent that you can. One resource that I found very helpful when I became a manager, especially here in Canada, is a website called managertools.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great resource because nobody is really trained on how to be a manager. Like you're given the title, but now you have to manage people, but it's not like
Sure.
you took a course or
You got
you
some
know.
leadership training maybe that could have been great or
Yeah.
not so great.
Yes, exactly. And also it's usually a bit abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm talking about what I found useful from this website, managertools.com, is actually the practical things that I need to do, to say, the topics I need to cover. So for anyone that's starting in management, I think that's a great resource.
Do you have any other, you're going to drop or are you going to pick up? But do you have any other, what's it called? Resources that you would recommend, say, a new manager consider looking at? Websites, books.
So, yeah, it's a good question. It's probably old school, but Peter Drucker is someone I often go back to. He's considered the management guru. So some of his, I haven't read all of his books or even all of his, like all of
Works.
it. Maybe I read only parts of it.
Few things.
But it's very insightful, and it's kind of going back to the basics and say, okay, when there's too much going on, what are the pillars, what are the foundation, what I need to make sure that it's still there. I found him very insightful. And I also personally like Tom Peters.
Oh yeah.
He's the guy that wrote In Search for Excellence like years ago in the 80s, probably. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Still relevant, you think?
So I saw him live a couple of times in Milan or in Italy in the early 2000s. I found a lot of that drove my management approach. So, I don't know if it's still relevant for everyone. I haven't really reviewed his content recently, but I found it was a good source. Again, it's more about foundations of almost principles, right? Not things that will change too quickly, because you also want to focus on things that you can rely on over time, not what's the latest
like
shiny
timeless,
object.
Timeless,
some of that
advice.
timeless stuff. Yeah, exactly. Is it my turn?
It is your turn. Perfect. The other thing I was gonna say, now that you're reading, or I'm reading anyway, all this stuff in the news about, or not in the news, but you can read it on LinkedIn, whatever business forum that you like. Management of the new generation, Generation Z, whatever. Do you have a take on differences, similarities between the newest generation coming into the workforce, how to manage them compared to managing someone of a prior generation at all? Have you had any experience with this yet?
I've had experiences, as in, especially in my most recent team, we were about 12 people, and there were all
You're starting
generations.
to see it now.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it now, I guess. And I've hired a few people that were almost off university. So they were definitely of a younger generation. I don't know if I have a particular take. I couldn't really see patterns. I could repeat what we all read about,
Sure.
New generations maybe be a bit more entitled and stuff like that. I found that people, maybe that's why I hired them, but I found some of these younger generations, they're driven and they're ready to work hard. And that has been my personal experience. Everything is different. You also have to be lucky. Hiring is a bit of it's an imperfect science.
Sure.
Like you try, but
Well,
really,
you've given tips on that too when it comes to hiring the right person, interviewing
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like I've seen some of your, if you're going to have your interview process like this is what I recommend. Like you've actually spoken on that.
yeah,
When it comes to say hiring the right person, because I agree, it's you can generalize about any
yeah,
generation if you really want to.
yes,
But
absolutely.
there's always going to be people who it's like, no matter what age this person is, they're a freaking great worker. And, they have all the qualities that you want in a worker, regardless of what generation they're from.
Yeah.
So when you're vetting someone or you're putting someone through the process, you said you have to be lucky sometimes, but a part of it is not luck,
Yeah.
right? Can you talk to us a bit
Yeah.
about that? Like, how have you had such success in hiring the right team?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know if I was successful. I hope I was.
Still working
but
on
it's
it.
Not, yeah, still working on it. But there's a few things I find. One of managers are not taught how to hire. And so most people, two things. Managers are not taught how to hire. So we don't know how to do it. And second, it doesn't happen often enough for you to develop
Like, get really good at it.
Yeah, it's almost like Christmas. Like you do it once a year.
You should do like an internship in my job.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, because you do that way more often than I do, and most managers do. Like for most managers, hiring, like you maybe hire one person every 18 months, maybe. And in my past role, I was able to hire a lot of people, about 20 people in less than 18 months, and there was a good opportunity to.
Really?
Oh, I see patterns now. Ooh, that's how we can do it. And so yeah, my approach is. Now, there's a few things. That's something that I learned from this company called Predictive Index. So you can think of when you hire someone, you're thinking about 3 dimensions. You're thinking about their head, their heart, and their briefcase. So you're thinking about their drivers, like what drives them. Are they an impact person or a lifestyle person,
Sure.
for example? You're thinking about their heart, so their values. Are their values aligned with the company values, with the team values? And their briefcase, are their experiences, work experiences, aligned, their skill set? Is it aligned to what we need to accomplish today, not in 5 years from now? And so that's a good framework to start assessing someone. And then how you do that is, okay, well, then you need to have probably a behavioral profile that you want to target and say, well, for this role, I need someone that's more outgoing, a lot of stakeholder management, right? Everybody can intuitively see the difference between a great salesperson and a great librarian. It's not the same behavioral profile, right? One is more probably, I don't want to stereotype, but one is probably more
That one really good salesy librarian.
all right, there you go.
You know what I mean? I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you want to identify, okay, what's the right profile for the role I'm hiring for? What success looks like, and what they need to accomplish. And based on that, you can probably identify a profile. And then asking behavioral questions. I mean, I could talk for hours about this,
what to ask.
but how to ask questions during the panel interview, how to collect feedback from your team, because you want to have your team involved so that they have a stake in the hire,
Sure.
right? Like if you were on the table with us, one of the 5 people in the panel interview, and you said, let's hire this person. Now, their success is also your responsibility. You can say, but I never really liked it. No, now
Voice
you
your
have to make
opinion
sure.
now, right?
Yeah.
Speak now or forever hold your peace,
Yeah.
basically.
And once we said, yes, let's hire, well, then everybody's responsible for making this person successful.
This I like. What did you just take there?
Is it? No, sorry, I wanted to take this. No, I wanted to take this.
You got to take the 5. You have to take the 5.
I have to take the 5?
You have to take the 5.
Man, I haven't played this in like 20 years. 20,
Oh,
25.
that's okay. I planned this.
There you go.
But okay, this is good advice though, because I think even from my side, right, when I look at hiring, it is something that's tough because there's a lot of things that, I mean, we have to do a lot of hiring, right? But I've also noticed in being, so I'm a headhunter, okay? I've always been one, but now that I have to hire for my own team, sometimes I can't even lie. Sometimes I actually feel like a fish out of water, and it's so strange because it's like I do this all
You can
the
see
time.
for others.
Yeah, like when I'm headhunting for someone else, it's almost like I know in a split second. It's like Fab is gonna love this person. Like I know right away. Like I can do some questioning, whatever I have to do. Interview happens, and bang, it's like perfect, bang on fit. For some reason, I have that feel. And then sometimes when I'm hiring directly, I'm interviewing different people, and it's like I start double thinking all these different things. It's so strange.
Yeah.
Like I actually don't have an explanation for it as to why I feel this way, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's different pressures that you have when it's your own team. But I think what you said about involving other people, even if they're a junior person on the team who's going to have to work with that person, their opinion is still valuable. And they do have you hired them for a reason.
Yeah.
So if they can see something
100%.
in who you're potentially bringing on the team or something that maybe isn't a good fit, I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
So that's a huge point that you made there.
Absolutely. And I think, it's interesting, but it makes sense to me that when you do it for others, you can do it in a split second, but for yourself, it's like, oh, wait a second. Now you can see both sides of both sides of pros and cons. In my approach to hiring, I don't know if it's my specifically, because a lot of that stuff I learned from manager tools and other books that I've read. But it's almost like you want to reduce your downside. Like you don't want to make a bad hire. Like that's what you want
It's
to
bad for
avoid.
everybody.
Yeah. Now, successful entrepreneurs will tell you should hire faster.
What do you think about this advice? Hire fast or hire fast, fire faster?
Yeah. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense if you are the one calling all the shots.
It's very
And
like
you're
North
entrepreneurial.
American approach, though, right?
yeah.
In Germany, this would never work.
Yes. In Europe, that wouldn't fly.
Legally, you cannot do this, right?
Yeah. So I think that's part, and a
Very-
lot of that
very
comes from probably the US, which probably
Sure.
has a different
Yeah.
different policies.
It
in
sounds
that
American
context.
made for sure.
Yeah.
Probably applies to some companies in Canada, but sounds American.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hey, and I guess the downside is also that, yeah, you hire fast, fire faster. But again, every time you let someone go, you have to think about how does it impact people? Like, how does it impact your culture? So there's only so many times that you can do that before people start thinking, okay, this is
Where
really
am I,
transactional.
right?
Yeah, what is this place?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand why they would say that, but not everybody in the position to do that.
Yeah. No, I hear you there. It's a strange thing to reflect on a little bit because like I've heard that from so many different
Mm,
entrepreneur, influencer type people, right?
Yeah.
Where they say that that's the way to do it. But I don't know. I also think there's something to be said where back to what we talked about if you are in that position and you have to unfortunately let someone go and you do it with dignity,
Yeah.
typically it's a longer process,
Yes.
right? So if you want to look at cost from a business perspective, probably costs more,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
To do that with dignity. However,
Yeah.
I think you also learn more in that process than you would if you think you can just hire and fire as you please.
Yeah, for
This
sure.
way you will never learn, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine. But
Yeah.
if you actually give due process, right? And like you said, do things with dignity, right? If you're gonna go down that road, I feel like you're smarter next
it's
time.
a longer path.
And
yeah.
maybe you put less people in that position. I don't know. I'm new to
Yeah.
this too, right? But what
Yeah.
do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think by not having that option,
Right.
not that you never have that option, but by not having it so readily available,
That you can just do as you
then it's
please,
like,
whatever
okay,
you want.
how do I coach this person? Like, I hired them for a reason, like, right?
Right.
Like, we all agree, like, there was a panel, like 3 to 5 people on the panel said, let's hire this person. So what did we see that is now not delivering? So I find most people need coaching, and like, I don't think people wake up in the morning because they want to do a shitty job. They want to do, they won't
best
be
work.
proud of the job that they do. And if they're not hitting the mark, well, there's something that maybe we can do to help them along the way. If we believed in them in the first place, right? If we hired someone, like, why did we hire them? So yeah, I think that's something that's it's somewhat related, but a model, because you're new to management, you said. One thing that I found very helpful for me was when I learned about something called the self-determination theory. Anyways, the point is that there are 3 things that drive people behavior and satisfaction, especially in a work environment. And the 3 things are autonomy,
Mhm.
mastery,
Mhm.
and a sense of belonging. So if you can provide people with these 3 things, they will be successful.
So
And you will be successful, therefore.
autonomy and freedom, like give them the framework and allow them to execute.
Yes.
Mastery, get really, really good
Yes.
at what they're doing and feel like they've really owned it and
They know what they're
mastered
doing,
it.
right?
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not just
they're a
thrown in
professional at
the.
what they're doing.
Yeah,
And the
they're a
last one,
professional. Belonging.
and belonging is
So they have a sense of belonging, like they belong, whether to a team
Pretty
or something.
self-explanatory.
It is, yeah.
That's
And I
valuable.
found that maybe it resonated so much with me because that's what I was looking for. Like, one of you asked at the beginning why I stayed at TELUS for so long. Was because most of my bosses, whether consciously or unconsciously, they allowed me to have the level of autonomy that I was looking for. Coming from a family business, that was important to me because I had kind of carte blanche with my parents, obviously. So to join a company and be
Now you have a
micromanaged, I
boss.
guess, it's like, man, that's gonna be tough to digest, and it's not gonna work for me. But my bosses
Wow, I
were
didn't
always
even think
allowing.
about that.
Oh yeah, when you're big difference. When you're in a small business, you're in a small pond, but you're the big fish. So you're the one calling the shots. When you join a corporation, it's like you're a small fish in a big pond. So you need to have someone that trusts in you enough to say, hey, you take care of this set of problems. I don't even need to be involved. You call me if you need help. You raise your hand. We'll support you. But otherwise, do what you think is best. And let me know once a week how things are going.
Last question for you.
Yeah.
For a manager right now.
Did they just win? I don't remember.
No, you got to scope up.
Oh, no scope.
So
Okay.
just throw it like this.
There
One
you go.
face up,
Okay.
one face down.
Okay.
Your
Sorry, I
question is
didn't
coming.
want to-
But okay. Let's say, don't tell me you have it.
No.
Okay. A manager right now is going through some volatility. They may be experiencing or have to unfortunately experience something that we talked about, or in general, they could just be having a really tough time managing their team through a bit of a rough patch, right? What's like one piece of advice that you haven't said yet that you would give this person?
So navigating tough times, I'm sure there's hundreds of articles and podcasts about that. My personal experience would probably be have a vision, I think the Bible says, I don't want to get religious, but it says without a vision, people perish. I found it to be true. Like you need to give people a direction. Hey, it might not even be the right direction. Maybe you need to course correct in 3 months from now. But in the meanwhile, do the best you can. Like if that's that's the best direction that we can identify right now, then that's where we're going, and then we'll course correct. So yeah, present a vision, show them that there is a way out of the darkness. I don't know how we want to say it. Yeah,
make a decision, be decisive.
And I would also say the second, it's probably go very well with it, is you need to over communicate. Like you want to be, to the extent possible, you want to over communicate and be as transparent as possible, which means to me, communicating things almost in real time and say, hey, this is the new piece of information I just got, right? So that people feel like they know what's going on instead of being, waiting in a dark room without information about what's going on outside. So one of my mentors at TELUS told me just a few months ago, I was talking about a problem I had. It was like, what will get you out of this trouble is communication, communication, communication. And I found that to be the answer for a lot of things. Like just communicate. And if you're a bit of an introvert, like some people are, that means probably you need to, from your perspective, you need to over communicate. Like you need to feel like you're over communicating.
Your over communicate will be a normal level of communication.
Exactly.
Probably, right?
For many people, there will be the normal, very well said. Yeah. And the other thing, the third thing I would have said is the autonomy, mastery, belonging. I found that to be one of the keys. I'm not saying that I was ever able or always able to put it in practice 100%, but it's a good framework. It's a good way of looking at what people might need.
Beautiful. There you have it. Fabio Aversa, MBA. You can find him on LinkedIn. Find him on LinkedIn. You heard it from him himself. If you need help or guidance or advice and you think he's the guy who could give that to you, please, by all means, reach out to him. He likes to network. He knows how to network. And like I did today, you can learn a ton. So grazie mille, amico. Thank you very much.
Maurizio, it was a pleasure to be here.